Committee will come to order, and Chair recognizes himself for the purpose of an opening statement. So with only a couple of weeks left in this session, we'll finish our work on these bills with little time to spare. If the Federal Trade Commission is to be the Federal Technology Commission, as the chairwoman has called it, then we must be able to operate in tech time. As a result, we have focused on bringing transparency and clarity to encourage innovation, while at the same time acknowledging that penalties must also reflect the speed of change. We have done this while maintaining the ability of the agency to protect consumers from injury. I understand that there is a philosophical aversion to imposing additional requirements on a consumer protection agency, even if they are intended to enhance transparency and clarify legality. But I want to be clear that we have made measured alterations in addressing the specific concerns that we've heard from the minority and the majority witnesses. The arguments we have with our minority colleagues do not prevent us from continuing to work towards bipartisanship. That has been the goal from the start, and we continue to push toward that. So let us be clear. What we're doing is to bring the great work that so many staffers at the FTC do, we're bringing it into the light. When an economic analysis is done, we should bring it forward. The Federal Trade Commission can still make recommendations. They just have to share their work. If no economic analysis has been done, then I believe they should say so. We don't change the unfairness standard. We take more of the unfairness statement, a statement that was sent to this body in 1980, and codify it to provide clarity. We ask the Federal Trade Commission to tell us, Congress, what it plans to do each year to exercise good oversight. We also ask them to report on what investigations they have done in an anonymous form, so long as the target doesn't object. We make changes to make it easier for the commissioners to discuss the many issues that they face amongst each other, both Republican and Democrat. Everyone seems to agree that guidance shouldn't be law. If that is where there is agreement, then let's focus on that part. On a separate note, I want to thank our colleagues in the Judiciary Committee for working with us on Sections 4 and 6 of our Process Reform Bill. We're happy to adopt their suggestion to expand these provisions to unfair methods of competition. I'm also pleased that we will be able to move the consumer-friendly provisions dealing with consumer reviews, ticketing, and the concept of Made in the USA. In particular, Congress will put more manufacturing jobs at risk if we allow states to make different regulations state by state about what it means to be made in the USA. So I'm pleased that we'll be able to move these bills out of committee. Certainly there have been some objections that we're advancing some of these bills, but let's be honest, this is a step forward. This is a bill that means jobs. It means enhanced consumer protection. So let's roll up our sleeves and get it done, get to work and get it done. And I will yield back the balance of my time and recognize the gentleman from Florida for 3 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you and Chairman Upton for holding this hearing. Actually, it's a markup. So today we consider 5 bills that will benefit our seniors, consumers, and businesses across the nation. I'm especially proud we will consider my FTC Reports Act as part of the larger FTC, the Federal Trade Commission's Process and Transparency Reform Act. This bill will bring about a more transparent and accountable FTC, a goal this committee has had for a long time. My FTC Reports Act will require the Federal Trade Commission to submit an annual plan to identify projected activities, including policy priorities, any rulemakings, plans to develop guidelines, efforts to restructure the Commission, and activities related to the Commission's efforts to combat fraud against individuals over the age of 65. By requiring annual reports from the FTC, we can identify areas of potential reform and ways we can help protect consumers, especially seniors. There have been far too many cases of exploitation of the elderly. Many of my constituents have fallen victim to fraudulent behavior and scams. According to the National Adult Protective Services Association, an estimated 1 in 5 adults over the age of 65 have reported financial exploitation. Moreover, only 1 in 44 cases of financial abuse were reported to the authorities. Unfortunately, these bad actors target our nation's seniors, and the results can be devastating to these individuals and their families. The Federal Trade Commission must work to better address this problem. The legislation before us today gives us the opportunity to help improve and modernize the FTC. These bills will provide certainty for all Americans. My bill helps to better protect our seniors and their families. I'm proud to continue working to empower all consumers. I want to thank Chairman Burgess, of course, for including my bill in this larger reform bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Chair, thanks the gentleman. Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey, the vice chairman of the subcommittee, Mr. Lance. 3 minutes for your opening statement, please.
Thank you much, Mr. Chairman. Tomorrow, the full committee will mark up several important bills that originated in the Commerce, Manufacturing, and Trade Subcommittee, including the FTC Process and Transparency Reform Act of 2016, the BOTS Act, the Reinforcing American-Made Products Act, and my own bill, the Consumer Review Fairness Act, which I have introduced with co-sponsorship by Congressman Kennedy of Massachusetts. The FTC Process and Transparency Reform Act is the product of the subcommittee's ongoing Disruptor series, where we have heard from stakeholders in several new, emerging, and adapting markets, and the various technologies and innovations that have disrupted their respective industries. These hearings have made it clear that after 20 years, it is time for an update to the FTC. The bill brings together 8 separate bills introduced by members of the CMT subcommittee, all aimed at bringing the Federal Trade Commission into the 21st century and providing an atmosphere that does not hinder innovation while still protecting consumers. I commend Chairman Upton and Chairman Burgess for their leadership in moving this ambitious package forward. I'm particularly pleased that we are considering my bill, the Consumer Review Fairness Act. Easy access to reliable product and service evaluations through websites such as Yelp and TripAdvisor have reduced transaction costs, and this has helped contribute to an enormous consumer surplus estimated in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Unfortunately, a number of businesses have become frustrated by what they perceive as unfair criticism, and some have turned to a questionable legal remedy known as non-disparagement clauses, often buried in non-negotiable form contracts. These clauses prohibit their customers from writing negative reviews about businesses, stifling consumers' freedom of speech. While there is a patchwork of state and local laws aimed at combating these clauses, the Consumer Review Fairness Act would create a federal framework that would void non-disparagement clauses in form consumer contracts and provide the FTC with the enforcement tools it needs to combat the bad actors who try to use these onerous clauses to their advantage. Tomorrow, I will be offering a bipartisan amendment to address some concerns raised by the FTC. It is my hope that the bill will continue to receive unanimous bipartisan support as it received in the subcommittee and as it received in the Senate at the end of last year. And, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The chair thanks the gentleman, and the chair reminds members that pursuant to committee rules, all members' opening statements will be made part of the record. Are there any further opening statements? Seeing none, the chair calls up H.R. 5510 and asks the clerk to report.
H.R. 5510, to amend the Federal Trade Commission Act to establish new requirements relating to investigations, consent orders, and reporting requirements, and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and the bill will be open for amendment at any point. So ordered. We are now on H.R. 5510, and the committee will reconvene at 10 a.m. tomorrow. I remind members that the chair will give priority recognition to bipartisan amendments and look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow. Without objection, the committee stands in recess until 10 a.m. tomorrow.